Pat Sandercock loved to hike, go to the gym, do yoga. Then, one day, her hip started giving her problems. And it just kept getting worse.
I couldn't mow the lawn. I couldn't pick up things on the ground. I had trouble lifting a watering can to water my plants because I couldn't bend over.
She needed hip surgery, and she faced a choice: wait or pay. Hi, I'm Paul Haavardsrud. Welcome to The Cost of Living. Pat decided not to wait. She flew to a faraway country and paid big bucks for that surgery. And every year, other Canadians pay hundreds of millions of dollars to do the same thing. Also today, airlines used to give us stuff for free, like legroom. Hey, being comfy is sweet. And now more Canadians, sick of being cramped, are willing to pay for that privilege. Up first, the US wants to play by different rules when it comes to trade. Its own. So where does this leave Canada? The U.S. ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, was just at a big global business conference in Banff. So there he was, on stage, talking to a former Canadian diplomat, Colin Robertson. These kind of chats are normally pretty backslappy. Not this time. Here's Colin reminding the ambassador about the deep ties between our countries.
If my biggest market for 40 states was one country, I wouldn't want to do anything to jeopardize that. It's working well. So we ask ourselves.
I think you got to be very, very careful about telling the U.S. what we should do, and you got to be careful about telling Canada. I think. What's that?
You got to also be careful about telling Canada what it should do.
I don't think we do tell Canada.
The art of diplomacy under this White House is striking a different tone. Donald Trump just rebuked the United Nations to the UN.
What is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential.
He didn't just question why the UN exists. He told 190 or so countries to follow America's lead, to stop worrying about everyone else, and look out for number one. Compare that to what Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister, Anita Anand, said to the UN.
The world needs multilateralism now more than ever. No nation can solve its problems alone.
These are two very different visions of the world, and they could mark a potential rupture from what we've come to know. Real New World Order kind of stuff. On Trump's first day in office, he pulled the US out of the Paris Climate Accord. The US withdrew from the World Health Organization. He's shown disdain for the World Trade Organization. This White House is practicing an older style of power politics where might makes right. And it's pulling other countries in that direction. But Canada's going a different way. It wants countries to stick with multilateralism. This is just a way to describe our current system, where countries work together for the common good. If it gets tossed aside, where would that leave this country and our economy? Andrew Cooper is a professor of international relations at the University of Waterloo. He says we've become used to countries cooperating and international institutions. But the world wasn't always this way. And if it changes, Canada may have to dust off some of our old playbooks.
We might look back and see that multilateral world as a kind of an aberration. You know, we might be going back to kind of ways of dealing with problems and dealing with big powers and dealing even with small countries, you know, from previous eras.
He says Canada, in the post-war years, really punched above our weight in helping to shape the modern world. After the war, we had, by some measures, the world's fourth largest military. This gave us a place at the table. We helped found the UN, and we helped create what's known as the rules-based international order. This is a system of agreements and treaties that countries sign to promote peace and also economic prosperity. As a smaller country, Canada knew that rules could protect us. They're a guardrail against bigger countries, even our closest neighbor, running us over.
There was always this anticipation that there would be, if not somebody like Trump, there would be the kind of presidents in the United States that would do things in a zealous, kind of unconventional, self-help manner.
Now that America has a zealous, unconventional president, we really need the rules. Now, the U.S., for the most part, is respecting our free trade deal, CUSMA. So the rules are holding, but they're also fraying. The U.S. is trampling on the Auto Pact. It's coming after steel workers. The White House just put a new tariff on kitchen cabinets because oak cupboards are apparently a threat to U.S. national security.
Quite clearly, with President Trump, the rules of the game are what he considers to be the rules of the game, not what the IMF and the World Bank and the WTO and the UN consider to be rules of the game.
All this might feel like uncharted territory, but Andrew says we have seen something like this before. In the 1970s, Richard Nixon was the U.S. president. Just like Trump, he wanted to reshape how the U.S. behaved in the world. And that left Canada scrambling with how to respond.
What we see, in the 1970s is exactly the same as what we see now. This kind of attempt to have what then was called the third option, to try to diversify, to have more trade with Western Europe, to have more trade with Japan. Pierre Trudeau goes on all sorts of trips to Latin America, to Indonesia, to other countries to try to promote this type of diversification.
This idea of finding a third option is back. The Prime Minister has gone to Europe 5 times in 6 months. We're trying to patch things up with Mexico and India. But if the U.S. decides they like us again, those countries know we could just go rushing back into their arms. Even now, Canadian businesses are still hedging their bets, hoping this blows over. But Andrew's not so sure things will go back to normal anytime soon.
We still got a fair way to go with the Trump administration. When you look at people lining up to maybe take the mantle from Trump, probably it's more on the side of self-help, on mercantilism, on tariffs, on kind of economic nationalism than we would have seen back in the early 70s.
Canada may need to figure out how to navigate a new world. If we stick to the old rules and other countries don't, they could play us for suckers. So like it or not, the U.S. is pushing Canada towards our own economic nationalism.
It's the kind of national model or the national game or the national championship, that we're going to see, because they're the only kind of approaches that you have some sort of degree of control of. And it's a word that's sort of bandied around, kind of strategic autonomy. It's the only thing that you have some degree of strategic autonomy is building a pipeline, building kind of railways, building infrastructure of various sorts.
That's kind of what we're doing. Look at the Major Projects Office, which is all about this country building big things. So we are already turning more inwards. But can we really thrive that way? Andrew says it won't be easy. Our domestic economy isn't huge. We have a relatively small population spread out over a big country. The era of globalization and free trade certainly has its flaws, but on balance, it has been good to Canada. It brought cash pouring into the country, made the stuff we buy cheaper. If globalization unwinds, that could all happen in reverse. Stuff gets more expensive. Less money flows our way. So what happens if this shift really takes root?
Do we go back to kind of logs and rocks? To some extent, we're beginning to see that, right? And the other, of course, is whether Canadian high tech can flourish. I mean, certainly we have a lot of brains. If you're looking for, I guess, prospects, it's really older and new economic enterprises that probably are going to be much more in the spotlight.
The old ways, it should be said, haven't been kicked to the curb. The rules-based order still has champions. Canada, the EU, Australia, Japan. So a potential new world order isn't yet a fait accompli.
As the Chinese would say from the past, too early to tell. I mean, it's certainly a break, no question. You have a speech like President Trump gives, but you have to find a lot of other speeches that are at odds with that. I mean, even from embattled countries like Ukraine, you have very different order. They want to join the EU, they want to join NATO, they want to be part of institutions. I mean, this is a very different model of the future.
So which way will things go? Andrew Cooper says what happens over the next 2 years will be crucial. If the U.S. economy booms, then a new world order becomes more likely. But if Trump's America First tactics backfire, then the old rules, they could make a comeback. As for Canada, Andrew says we've navigated through turbulent times before.
I mean, I don't think we can underestimate the ability or the expertise of Canadians to operate in this system. I mean, look at the renegotiation of NAFTA. This was surprisingly successful. Look at the presence, in the UN, Prime Minister Carney going, the foreign minister going. A lot of Canadians, this is what they stand for. They want to have more kind of order and rules, not less.
Canada helped shape the world we've lived in for the last 80 years. The U.S. now wants something different, but that doesn't mean it's going to get it. On your radio and by podcast, this is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haavardsrud. If you've ever been upgraded on a flight, it's like winning the airport lottery. Extra legroom, sometimes your seat turns into a bed. It's like a different world. And as producer Danielle Nerman finds, more Canadians want that world, even if they have to pay for it.
Guests seated in Zone 3 are now welcome to board.
When Erin Duschnicki was in her 20s, she traveled all over Europe. And as a student on a budget, she didn't care if she had to sit at the very back of the plane, so long as the flight was cheap. For years, Erin sucked it up and flew economy. But when she and her wife, who live in Ottawa, were invited to a wedding in Australia,
I really wanted to go. But I'd always said, the only way I could possibly go is I'd have to spring for, business class. Because I cannot fathom, sitting upright in economy for, 14 hours.
So they splurged and got the primo seats.
It was kind of oh. You got on the plane and they give you your little pajamas and you just get in your cozy little pod and you lie down and go to sleep and you wake up in Australia.
That experience totally changed the way Erin looks at travel.
I learned the value in spending more to be comfortable.
A lot of North Americans are feeling that way. According to a new report, business class travel is growing at a faster rate than economy. Air Canada and WestJet both say, compared to last year, revenue from their premium cabins is up.
I think there's a little bit of FOMO and social media at play here.
Barry Choi is a personal finance and travel expert in Toronto.
You definitely see people flying business class or premium, and you want part of that too, and I certainly don't blame you.
And then I went to go check out the lounge. Guys, this was on the plane.
Immediately, we were greeted by a chef, and he said we could order anything on this menu. So I ordered a round of appetizers.
Airlines make more money on business class seats. That's why they entice people to upgrade, and they've gamified the experience. You can bid on a better seat a few days before your flight, or join a real-time auction hours before takeoff for a shot at sitting up front.
They win that bid and they realize that, hey, I got a lot of good value out of making this bid. It might be worthwhile to bid again.
And that is how they hook ya.
After having had a taste of the ambrosia of a first-class ticket, it's hard to go back.
Barry Prentice is with the University of Manitoba's Transport Institute. He says for airlines, an empty seat is money down the drain, so they're always looking for ways to maximize revenue.
If you can convince somebody who perhaps booked a cheap fare to upsell to that higher quality seat, well, now you've got another seat that's available for somebody else that may not go first class, but they would take that seat in the economy side.
And that seat in economy, it ain't what it used to be. To keep prices low, airlines have been squeezing more seats on their planes and charging for everything from carry-on to a cup of coffee. Soon, some ultra-cheap seats on WestJet won't even recline. After tasting the champagne of air travel, Erin Dushnicki isn't sure she'll ever go back to the back of the plane.
I don't know if it's just me being like old and cranky, but I find like everything traveling these days is so busy and so crowded and frustrating.
Instead, she plans to fly less, but do it in style.
We've just taken a less frequent, better quality over quantity kind of approach.
For The Cost of Living, I'm Danielle Nerman.
This is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haavardsrud. So, Leah Hendry, we're not going to give away our ages here, but let's just say this. Our bodies, our joints, we're not in our 20s anymore.
Definitely not. Think back to when you could play a little 3-on-3 basketball and just kind of bounce out of bed the next morning.
Oh, to bounce, Leah. Oh, to bounce.
Those days are over for me too. And it's not just us. The Canadian population is aging, and there's a lot more people waiting for hip and knee replacements. Some of those wait times are long, and sometimes it can take years to get in for surgery. And more Canadians are doing something about it on their own.
And when you say that, you mean they're paying to get stuff done privately?
Yeah, but there's a little bit more to it than that. Pat Sandercock has been down this road. Her issues started a few years ago when she was walking the Camino de Santiago. That's a historic pilgrimage between Portugal and Spain. It's quite physically demanding. And along the way, Pat started to limp.
And I thought, well, I've done something stupid here. And because I didn't know what was going on, because something like osteoarthritis is never in your mind when you're as young as I was at that point. And
unfortunately, she did have osteoarthritis, and she tried to manage it, first with medication, then physio. Nothing worked. It just got worse to the point where
I couldn't mow the lawn. I couldn't pick up things on the ground. I had trouble lifting a watering can to water my plants because I couldn't bend over.
Well, for her, that's no way to live.
Yeah, she was about 60 at the time and really used to being active. So she got referred to a hip and knee clinic, and that's when she was told she'd likely have to wait about 3 years to get a hip replacement.
But that's 3 years of just kind of not really living her life.
Yeah, so like a lot of Canadians, she started looking into paying for private surgery. You can do that in Canada. It's legal. You may have to travel out of the province, but there are large private clinics in Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, Montreal. But it's not cheap.
Well, how much for a hip?
Like $35,000 for one hip.
That's like $70,000 for the pair.
But Pat didn't pay that. Instead of going to a private clinic here or waiting for the healthcare system, she did what more Canadians are doing. She had her surgery outside of Canada.
Well, where did she go?
Lithuania.
Okay. Why there?
Well, Lithuania is kind of trendy right now. It has good word of mouth. It's one of the cheapest places you can go. But there's a lot to choose from out there. You go onto Facebook or Reddit, and there's people swapping stories and advice about getting orthopedic surgeries done in other countries. There's Mexico, Turkey, India, the U.S.
And Lithuania, which apparently gets good reviews.
It does, and the price was right. It included flights, surgery, physiotherapy, follow-up care when she got back home, all for just under $20,000.
So that's cheaper than doing it here in Canada, but it's still not exactly cheap.
No, but Pat says she could wrap her head around $20,000. $35,000, that was a lot tougher. She's single, and at the time she was working as a librarian. She was getting ready to retire and working on her PhD on the side.
I had already been laying out, $6,000 every 6 months already for the tuition, and I was feeling pretty drained, but I cashed a few things in. I kept thinking this is eating into my retirement, but I couldn't have a retirement the way the Canadian option had been presented to me.
By going outside the public system, she was able to get her surgery in 3 months instead of 3 years here.
That's huge for her, right? And her life, even considering the $20,000.
When you're in pain, you just want relief, even if you have to go to Lithuania to get it. I spoke to Dr. Soranis Tarasavačius. He's an orthopedic surgeon at Nord Orthopedics, another medical clinic that's over there. And he sees more Canadians coming every year. And here's why.
Usually when I talk to Canadians, we say, well, it's a long waiting list in Canada, and they have not much options. And if we decide to choose Europe, I think we have a name already, and the patients know about us because so many patients from Canada already operated on with a good outcome and good results.
He's talking about having a name, his reputation in this kind of world. What's the competition out there like?
Oh, there's so much. There's clinics in different countries that are all trying to get international patients. And most of the websites for these clinics, they're available in English. People can find testimonials, pictures of the facilities, and information about the surgeons. The prices are all listed in euros or the American dollar, so they make it pretty easy to figure out.
Sure, but anybody can put up a website. And if we're talking about surgery, me going in, doing something like this to my body, I don't know, am I going to trust that website?
That makes you a little bit nervous? Well, that's where a guy like Jonathan Adelheit comes in. He's the CEO and founder of the Medical Tourism Association. It's a not-for-profit, and he actually helps people navigate private surgery options abroad.
There's an unlimited amount of places they can go, very competitive from a pricing and quality perspective. And that's the advantage of medical tourism is you can leave your country and go to the top orthopedic guy in 20 different countries, and you could do it in a couple days or a week because there's no scheduling issue.
Well, he's really selling this, right? And he's also selling the idea of, hey, you can pay and get to the front of the line.
And people are willing to pay. There is a market for this in Canada. Jonathan actually advocates for insurance companies and businesses to offer medical tourism as part of their health plans.
Do we have any sense of how many Canadians are doing this?
That's a bit harder to pin down, but Jonathan estimates more than 400,000 Canadians will go abroad for medical care this year. And when you look just at orthopedic surgery, it may be as high as 90,000. So he got that number from talking to international hospitals, doctors, and the medical facilitators that he works with. But this isn't specifically tracked by anyone here in Canada.
Well, you'd think this is something we'd want to know, if only to just help us plan our own healthcare system.
All we know is how much people say they spent if they traveled abroad for health reasons. So StatsCan says that was nearly $500 million in 2022 and close to $700 million in 2023. So the trend line is definitely going up. More Canadians are shelling out for private healthcare.
But that's out of pocket. And as you're saying, this is expensive.
And not everybody has money in the bank for it. I've spoken with people who've had to crowdfund to pay for private hip surgery. Jeremy Snyder, he's seeing that too. He's at Simon Fraser University, and he's done research on both medical crowdfunding and the cost of medical tourism.
You'll see people who spend down their savings or, mortgage their house, remortgage their house, go into debt in these kind of cases. And that can be pretty catastrophic for them.
And then, he says, whenever you go abroad, you're taking a chance.
A wrinkle to that is, you might have a sticker price in terms of, okay, this is a package deal, $20,000 to get your hip surgery in Tijuana, sit by the beach and come back. But there might be some non-obvious cost to it as well. Maybe you have complications and you have to go back. Maybe Air Canada goes on strike.
Well, that's a whole lot more expensive than just driving across town to the clinic.
Yeah, way more expensive. And that's why some financial planners are now advising their clients to plan ahead and set aside money for private surgery.
Okay, so it's like establishing a joint account, except it's for your joints?
I guess. I mean, never mind estate planning. Now planning for the future includes saving for your knees, your hips, and your shoulders. Aravind Sithamparapillai is a financial planner in Hamilton, Ontario, and he says this is part of his conversations with clients.
Does it make sense to have some type of additional safety net? Because you don't want to necessarily be making that decision later to decide that you're going to burn a ton of money when your back's against the wall.
Yeah, well, saving, having a plan, that's all prudent, Leah. But at the same time, we already kind of have a plan. We pay taxes. We have a healthcare system.
We do, but let's go back to those wait lists. They've only gotten longer, especially in Manitoba and in the Maritimes. The median national wait time, so that's from referral to surgery, it's more than a year. In 2020, it was under 8 months. So if you look at this trend, people waiting longer and longer, we're probably going to see more people doing exactly what Pat Sandercock did.
Packing her bags and going to Lithuania.
Yeah, and she doesn't regret it, even though it cost her $20,000.
Okay, well, after all of this, how's her hip?
It's great. She was pretty much back to normal 8 weeks after her surgery. She's now retired and making the most of it.
Earlier this summer, I walked the Camino with a girlfriend, and I'm going again next year. I'm kind of hooked on it right now. It's my thing. I'm at the gym every day, and I signed up for a new yoga class. I'm back to normal.
I think Pat's normal would put me into the ground.
Come on, we could do it together. The Camino, it's on my bucket list, but you just have to listen to the sound of my squishy bad knee.
Nah, you're fine. We're young. We're spry, Leah. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
That's all for the show. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. The show is produced by Daniel Nerman, Leah Hendry, and Jennifer Keane, with help from Jeff Kynock. I'm Paul Haavardsrud. Thanks for listening.